Stepping up to the couch, it's Brian, who led the league last season in cracked screens. But with his new athletic case, it looks like that won't be the case. Touchdown, Brian!
Is open. Towns doesn't give it to him. And Derrick Rose is fouled. This free throw could put Rose at 50.
On Halloween of 2018, Derrick Rose revitalized his career. Revitalized, that is the word. I chose it for the title of this documentary for a very specific reason. Revitalization means to give new life, not to revive an old life, but to give a new one. Now obviously Derrick Rose is still Derrick Rose. He hasn't become a new person, but his career? His career has been revitalized. Derrick Rose isn't back, and he will very likely never be back, which in a way is sad, but there is also some beauty in it. Beauty in revitalization. The Derrick Rose of old is dead, but that's okay. There's a new Derrick Rose, and while he may no longer be an MVP level player, he's still a force to be reckoned with. And in this doc, we're gonna go over the glitz, glam, and glory. The dark days.
Find out that you bypassed the harder team in Miami. Rose came down on his left foot. See him holding onto his knee and down.
And where he is now.
Minnesota's enjoyed health, and that's been a great thing. Derrick Rose, wow! What a sequence for the former MVP!
With the first pick in the 2008 NBA Draft, the Chicago Bulls select Derrick Rose from the University of Memphis.
When Derrick Rose entered the league, it was clear he was destined to be a star, averaging nearly 17 points, 6 assists, and 4 rebounds on 47% shooting, being an easy pick for the Rising Stars game, winning Rookie of the Year, and being a key contributor to the Bulls making the 7th seed, and a key contributor in the Bulls pushing the defending champion Boston Celtics to 7 games, putting up 26 and 5 on 47% shooting for the series against an all-defensive second-team level player in Rajon Rondo. His sophomore season is when Rose would establish himself as a star player, averaging 21 and 6 on 49% shooting, making an all-star team, becoming the first Chicago Bull to make an all-star team since Jordan. The Bulls once again made it to the playoffs, but they lost in the first round in 5 games to the LeBron James-led Cleveland Cavaliers, despite Rose averaging 27 and 7. Before the start of the 2010-2011 season, Rose made his goals coming into the year very clear.
Hey Derrick in the back, you won the Rookie of the Year award, you made your first all-star team a year ago. Now people around the league are talking about you taking the next jump to becoming a top 10 player in the league. I know you've never been one to back away from a challenge. What kind of expectations do you set for yourself individually going into year 3?
It's high. The way I look at it within myself, why not? Why can't I be the MVP of the league? Why can't I be the best player in the league? I don't see why. Why can't I do that?
The media and the NBA fan base initially laughed at this. A 21-year-old third-year player saying he could win MVP. Ridiculous. How naive he was to think it was that simple. Well, he proved them all wrong. Rose spent the 2010-2011 season dominating everyone that stepped in his way. He dropped a career-high 39 points versus Detroit in the second game of the season. He dropped a new career-high of 42 versus the Spurs and a 30-point 17-assist game versus Milwaukee. He was voted an All-Star. He would be one of the 3 players in NBA history to finish a season with 2,000 points and 600 assists. The only 2 players to accomplish this besides for Rose were LeBron and Michael Jordan. He of course won MVP, becoming the youngest player to ever do to this, winning it at just 22 years of age with averages of 25 points, 7.7 assists, and 4 rebounds on 44.5% shooting. He accomplished this with no consistent offensive help besides for Luol Deng, and 50 games of Carlos Boozer. The Bulls won 62 games, 21 more than last season, beating the Pacers and Hawks in the first round, but they would lose to the Big Three Miami Heat, with Rose effectively being shut down by LeBron James. In the 2011-2012 season, Rose hit a bit of a setback, missing over half of the season with an injury, which brought his stats down, but he was still the same player and still made an all-star team. Then came the first round of the playoffs. The Bulls were up 99-87 with 1.5 minutes left.
Find out that you bypass the harder team.
Rose shouldn't have been on the court.
Rose came down bad on his left foot.
But he was.
See him holding onto his knee and down.
Rose went down with an ACL tear, one of the worst injuries in basketball, sending his career on a downward spiral. After the ACL tear, then came the return, which in hindsight was just a depressing falsehood. Rose spent a lot of time in rehab trying to get back on the court. He finally made his return on October 29th, 2013, putting up 12 points and 4 assists versus the Miami Heat, but 10 games later,
Pulling a little bit. There's that backdoor cut. He put on the brakes, and then right there, almost like he just kind of took an awkward step right there. Well, he was holding his knees, limping off.
Rose was out. Again. A huge blow. He missed the remainder of the 2013-14 season with an MCL injury. He finally was able to get some consistent play in the following season, but the dynamic of the team had changed. The Bulls had added all-star Pau Gasol on free agency, previously of the Los Angeles Lakers, and a new man had emerged as the leader of the team in Rose's absence, Jimmy Butler, who was the 2014-15 most improved player, averaging 20 points per game out of nowhere. With this change, Rose had to take a bit of a backseat and wait to try and make his return to star form later. The Bulls saw the most success they had since Rose's MVP season. Butler and Pau were all-stars. Rose averaged 18 and 5, but it was on poor efficiency. The Bulls won 50 games, beat the Bucks in the first round, and lost in a controversial series to the Cleveland Cavaliers. After this, head coach Tom Thibodeau was fired. College coach Fred Hoiberg was hired in replace of him, and the Bulls missed the playoffs.
Derrick Rose will be starting fresh in the Big Apple. The Vertical's Adrian Wojnarowski is reporting the Chicago Bulls have traded Rose to the New York Knicks in exchange for Robin Lopez, Jose Calderon, and Jaren Grant.
After missing the playoffs, the Derrick Rose era in Chicago came to an end. Jimmy Butler was now the face of the franchise. There was questions about Derrick Rose's fit with Butler, and the Bulls front office was done waiting for Rose to return to MVP form. His year on the Knicks was nothing short of a clusterfuck. Not for Rose as an individual. He'd put up his best scoring season post ACL tear, averaging 18 a game on 47% shooting, but there was a lot of drama with the Knicks star Carmelo Anthony and Knicks GM Phil Jackson. This wasn't a winning formula, but Rose got his numbers. But because of the situation in New York being all over the place, many fans, and especially teams, viewed Rose's numbers as illegitimate. Because of this, Rose struggled to find a team to take him on in the offseason. It wasn't until the last few days of free agency when Rose finally got a contract offer from the Cleveland Cavaliers. 1 year, $2.1 million. In just a few years, Derrick Rose had went from league MVP to a league minimum backup point guard that 29 teams wouldn't take a chance on. This was one of the lowest points in Rose's career. It only got lower when it seemed like Derrick Rose's doubters were correct, with him averaging 10 points on 42% shooting for the Cavs, which led to him taking time away from the team to reevaluate his career. He would be traded to the Jazz on the trade deadline and released by the Jazz. It really looked like this was the end of Derrick Rose's career.
Rose gets inside, puts up a tough shot, and hits it anyway. 48.
Luckily, Derrick Rose managed to find himself on the Minnesota Timberwolves. Being a former player of Tom Thibodeau, Rose had benefited from some favoritism. But Rose wasn't quite back yet. He averaged just 6 points in the 9 games that he played for Minnesota. A lot of Minnesota fans didn't like this signing, some were even mad that he was getting minutes over Tyus Jones. But he showed a spark in the playoffs versus the Rockets, averaging 14 points on 50% shooting from the field and 70% from 3. It was only 5 games, but it gave some hope that Rose could still have a place in the NBA. Now here we are this season. Derrick Rose didn't start the season setting the league on fire. He scored 8 points on 25% shooting in 30 minutes versus the Spurs. Only 12 points versus the Cavaliers, but he dropped 28 on 52% shooting versus Dallas. He averaged 15 a game over the next 4 games. Then in a matchup versus the Utah Jazz, well, I hate to use this cliche line, but in a matchup versus the Utah Jazz, one of the best defensive teams in the league, Derrick Rose shocked the world. By the end of the first quarter, Rose had 13 points, which, had he stopped there, would have been the 4th most points he'd scored all season. And he did that in just the first quarter. He only scored 3 points in the second quarter, so at this point, Rose was having a good game, but nothing crazy. The second half would change that. He dropped 19 points in the third quarter and dropped 15 in the fourth quarter, scoring 6 of those points in the final minute of a neck-and-neck game, and as seen at the start, hitting the final 2 free throws to seal the game, giving Rose 50 points, a career high. Words cannot describe just how impactful this game was on the NBA. The NBA's fan base, Derrick Rose's fans, Derrick Rose himself, the biggest and brightest stars in the league were tweeting about it, losing their minds. Words truly can't describe it, but I will try my absolute best. Since 2012, there is no player in the NBA who has gone through more hardship, more struggle, or more disappointment. No player has ever gone through as many lows as Derrick Rose has after the heights that he had reached. There were many times where not only was there questions if Rose could be a star again, but questions if Rose could even find a place on the end of a bad team's bench. All this pain, all this disappointment was not only felt by Rose, but by his hardcore fans as well. Trust me, I'm a Bulls fan. I've never seen a fan base more dedicated to a player just being happy. This performance by Rose was a relief to all of the hardship of his career. It was one of the greatest moments in not only basketball history, but in sports history. You'd have to be heartless not to feel for Rose in this moment.
You can see you're very emotional. A huge victory for this team, and it comes from you and your career high 50 points. What does it mean to you, Derrick?
Everything, man. I work my ass off, bro. I wouldn't have did this for the franchise, the organization, the fans, everybody, man. I wouldn't be able to play the way I play.
And now Rose is averaging nearly 19 points, nearly 5 assists, shooting 48% from the field, and a career high by a large margin, 46% from 3. As a career 29% 3-point shooter, Rose has went from one of the worst shooters in the league to one of the best. He may no longer be at his highest, but he's more than recovered and rised above his lowest. That's the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.
He's taking this on as a challenge and goes right at Derrick Rose and everybody here at